Good afternoon, good
No,
afternoon,
the
good
cameras are
evening,
on.
good
No,
evening.
no. Cameras are
We
rolling.
are AM
I gotta start
1370
Just letting you know,
WLTH
turn the
and
camera
on the
off.
FM dial 92.7 W224EA, Gary, Indiana. It's a remarkable, beautiful gift. But it's really it has no power on its own. We the people give it power. We the people give it meaning with our participation and with the choices that we make. We the people give it meaning with our participation and with the choices that we make.
There's only one man clever enough to have ever been such a dastardly triumph.
And I thought you were ready to give up.
Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government. And with three little words, we the people. We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route and how fast.
We the people give it meaning with our
30 seconds.
and with the choices that we make. We the people give it meaning
10
with
seconds.
our participation and with the choices that we make.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, Gary, Indiana, the region, Hammond, Lake Station, everybody in Northwest Indiana, and those of you who are listening, streaming in Chicago or other places, good evening to you too. Today is Thursday, September 1st, and this is the third installment of We the People, and we're here with our guest, Attorney Justin Camper, and we'll have a little bit of discussion about jurisdiction. And as you know, our goal is to raise awareness, and not just raise awareness, but give actionable information to better our situation and our living conditions and our circumstances. So that's our motive for having this show. Even though we touch on a variety of topics, we always want to bring things back home where we can discuss a little bit and give you something that you can act upon instead of just having conversation. How you doing this evening, Justin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we get started, I'm gonna do two things real quick. I'm going to read a disclaimer. The views expressed by the host and callers of this show are not necessarily the view of WLTH management, owners, advisors, and sponsors. I'm also going to do one more thing. I'm going to mention to our audience, unfortunately, the passing of Prince Azil Ben Israel from Chicago. He was a part of the Hebrew Israelite and Nation of Jerusalem movement. And I'm going to have a guest come on. I'm going to have Prince El Rahim Ben Dan. He's going to call in at about 6:15 or so, and he's going to discuss his longtime friend, and he's going to probably explain what a Hebrew Israelite is and touch a little bit on that. And we plan to have him come back to the show to discuss what his experience was like living in Africa, leaving the United States. That was one of the big things that Prince Azil Ben Israel was known for. He was born in April of 1941 in Chicago as Warren Brown, and he graduated from Dunbar High School Academy. Then he attended DePaul University and studied international studies at the University of Ghana in Accra, and at Marquis University and Kampala University in Uganda. He received his doctorate from School of Interactive Theology and the School of Prophets Institute in Dimona, Israel. And in 1971, he moved to Dimona, Israel, to to join the Ben Amin Ben Israel's African Hebrew Light Nation of Jerusalem movement. So this may be a real interesting conversation. It's part of our semi-American and religious history. And so we want to touch on that a little bit today with a call as well. But back to Mr. Camper here. Mr. Camper, for the audience, the listening audience, would you describe your firm and give out your contact information if anybody's looking for an attorney, and mention your practice of law?
Sure. So thanks to John. Big shout out to John, local legend, John Allen. But yeah, my name is Attorney Justin Camper. I run a law practice called Justin Camper Law, and I specialize in small business practice. I do criminal defense as well, but my main passion and focus is on small business. And so that means, everything that a business would need legally, whether it's forming an LLC, a corporation, or nonprofit, whether that's contracts or whether that's trademarks, copyrights, and sometimes businesses get into lawsuits, and as John can tell you a lot about that. And I represent businesses when they are dealing with litigation and they're dealing with lawsuits. So that's what I handle. That's a gamut of things what I handle. Anybody can reach out to me through our number, 219-281-6166. I'll repeat that, 219-281-6166. Or you can just Google me or look at my website, message me through my website, JustinCamperLaw.com.
So today we're going to have Mr. Camper. Hopefully we can get him on here as a reoccurring guest and ultimately even a host on a segment where we, like I said in the last episode, we're going to either read a statute, ordinance, a law, or a legal doctrine term. We're going to talk about that term, get a definition, then we're going to have them elaborate on it, then we'll take some calls. And the goal of that is not necessarily to give legal advice. That's not the goal of that. The goal of that is to educate the public and the citizens in general, because I would love for all us to be what I consider professional citizens. I consider myself a professional citizen, and I would love it if off the top of our head, most of our rights within the Bill of Rights or embedded in the Bill of Rights, we would know them and know different ways and how they're applicable, because they're very important. Some of us subconsciously know them, but we really, really don't understand them, and sometimes we let them cross over, and sometimes to our detriment of not being aware of really what they mean, we can fail in advocating for ourselves, and on occasion we can fail in advocating and helping our own government even manage ourselves for our misunderstanding about our Bill of Rights. A tad bit of history, not just on the Bill of Rights, but I call it what is commonly called the post-Civil War or Reconstruction amendments to the Constitution. And one of the most important ones is the 14th Amendment, right? And this is a bit of interesting history. Back in, let's say, about 1897, in California, it was a lot of Chinese immigrants, and it was a lot of European immigrants too, due to the gold rush. So this is post-gold rush, post-Civil War, of course. And some of the businesses there, a lot of people were self-employed, and they provided services to the people that was there for the gold rush. And one of the things that the Chinese immigrants did was laundry. And it was some non-Chinese people did laundry too. And it was a Chinese immigrant that applied for a permit. Instead of doing laundry outside, he wanted to build a structure to do laundry. And he wasn't given a permit because of his national origin. And he went to the Supreme Court, and this is how, or the first time that we have a major case in recorded history where discrimination not due to national origin was ruled upon favorably by the Supreme Court. So it was a person from China had enjoyed the 14th Amendment that was with us as early as the late 1800s. So this is important, how much equal protection under the laws and rules are. Not only do it go back some time, it's for everybody, literally. And I always say the Constitution is the greatest document ever penned by mankind, and we should learn a little bit about it. What you say, Justin?
I think so too. A lot of people disagree with you on that, but
They really don't understand. They think that the people who interpret the Constitution, that their ill conduct and their misconduct take away from the value of the document. So the document is just as much yours as the people who wrote it, even though they didn't write it with all of us in mind. That's besides the point. We successively, through litigation, got the Constitution either amended or interpreted in a way where it includes us too. Am I correct, Councilman?
right, you're right.
So we have to use that to our advantage. With that being said, the topic today that we're going to talk about a little bit with Mr. Camper is jurisdiction. And I may bring up also the topic of non-delegation. That's a legal term to use where, and the reason why I want to bring it up, we do it as civilians a lot, where you have an agency or entity that's promulgated by law or statute to do one thing, and sometimes they do another, or they assign their duties to another party. And we really shouldn't do that. And they shouldn't do it either, because sometimes the other party don't know what they're doing or whatever. But anyway, historically, particularly in our community locally, we have this fallacy where we believe we approach our elected officials who do have a hard job to do, so there's no ride on them. And we're asking for something that's not really in their purview to do, and we don't know who to talk to. And a lot of times our elected officials spend a lot of time or no time at all trying to get us on the right track or direct us the right way. And some of that is from non-delegation, some of that is for not knowing proper jurisdiction. And Mr. Camper is going to talk to us a little bit about jurisdiction and the role or importance that jurisdiction play. Maybe at different levels. We're not going to get too collegiate about it for the sake of the listening audience, but we're going to take some calls, and the calls may require us to get a little collegiate about it. What you think about that, Justin?
Sounds great.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over for Justin for a minute, and he give me what he believed to be the lamest term of jurisdiction.
Yeah. So, again, thanks for having me on. So jurisdiction, in one word is authority, right? And authority, in another word, is power. Every governmental entity, every judicial entity, whether in the courts, they have a certain limit on their power, right? And a small claims court judge can't rule on federal issues. A federal judge is not supposed to be ruling on state issues, right? So that's how it works. And so there's always exceptions to every rule, but in general, that's how it works. So jurisdiction, like I said, in layman's terms, is authority. And so you have to know which court your issue has. What is the jurisdiction for that particular issue? So you gotta first identify what is your issue. Okay, if it's a small claims issue, is it a state issue, is it a federal issue? Then you file a case in the proper court, and that judge has to have jurisdiction over that claim. And there's two types of jurisdiction. There's subject matter jurisdiction, and then there's personal jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction is what it says. It's that judge has to have authority over the subject matter that you're bringing to court in. Personal jurisdiction is that judge has to have authority over the person. He has to have jurisdiction over that particular person. So subject matter is the big gamut. A judge cannot, it's against the law, against the Constitution, cannot rule on a case that they do not have subject matter jurisdiction. Now, personal jurisdiction can be waived, but subject matter jurisdiction can't be waived. And so power and authority is what jurisdiction is, and making sure you have your case in front of the right judge.
Okay, and with that being said, I personally feel it's a very important issue, because sometimes in our community as lay people, we think just because someone is a judge, they just have authority.
Yes.
So with that being said, for all of us lay people, we don't go to the judge that's in family court and they address our tax issues. And we don't go to a criminal court and they address our bankruptcy.
Correct.
Am I right?
Correct.
Okay. And the bankruptcy judge don't hear murder cases. Okay? So
Right.
So when somebody say they're a judge
Right.
or anything like that, I give you an idea how bad this misunderstanding of jurisdiction on the base level is in our community. I was doing some postings on a property. It was a legal notice. And the guy come up and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm posting a legal notice." I said, "This your place?" He said, "No." I said, "You know who live here?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" He said, "I'm with the city." I said, "Well, what do you do?" He doing streets and sanitation. He thought he had authority to say something to me about me doing a posting, a legal notice on private property. I guess, I don't know, maybe he thought I was littering or something, I don't know. But, and then the property, it was boarded up, so what, I wasn't burglarizing. And he probably meant well, so there's no personal ride on him. But what I'm saying is that we're so far gone with our base understanding of people's roles and jurisdiction. And we probably have to revisit this again, where we even talk about administrative agencies, because this is a subject I want Justin to talk about so bad. I'm going to send him an email of a
Hello?
one-page document I wrote about it. I
Hello?
call it the administrative oligarchy,
Hello?
right? When we're an administrative oligarchy in America, we really don't have our elected officials representing us. We have so many administrative agencies that's just really running the populace.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need it to help manage the populace, but they basically running the populace, and they're doing whatever they want sometimes. And sometimes Congress or our state legislator has made the mistake of allowing them to have some degree of judicial review of their own decision.
And that's why we won your case, right?
And that's why
I don't know if we want to get into that.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
But what we're gonna do is we're gonna, if our caller is up, our caller is up. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna pause for a moment, and we're gonna take our caller, and then the caller gonna talk maybe a little more after the break. Then we're gonna get back on this subject. But I had to give you guys a teaser so you can know how important this is. So right now we have on the line Prince El Rahim bin Dan. Prince El Rahim bin Dan, how you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
I'm doing great. So, you can start off by telling us a little bit about yourself briefly, and then we'd like you to elaborate on your friend Prince Azil bin Israel, and give us a little bit about him. And if we come into break time, no worries. You just hold on. We're gonna come back in, and we're gonna finish up. So go right ahead and get started.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to your program and allowing me to speak to everyone in the listening audience, whom I greet with peace and blessing, and also bring greetings from West Africa, where I reside currently in Ghana, West Africa. And this is to all of those who have an idea, a thought, a desire, or who just want to know what it's like to travel there, to be there. You are welcome, and I issue a personal invitation on behalf of all Ghanaians that asked me to bring that message to our brothers and sisters here. I have lived in West Africa for the past, well, within the past 20 years, for maybe about 16 years. I was born and raised in America, was educated in America, and so I experienced everything that came with being black in America. So for me, the question was raised while I was growing up. It was raised by, it was a political question, raised by an entity called the Moral Majority here in America. And they issued the challenge to all black people who didn't like the way they were being treated, didn't like the laws, didn't like whatever was going on. They invited us to go back to Africa if we didn't like it. I took that as a personal challenge. I entertained the question, both pro and con, and I decided that, okay, I'll take that thing. I'll take that challenge, and I did. So I prepared myself and my family for an excursion to West Africa initially to see what it would be like and what we would do there. In the meantime, I was preparing myself and to be able to make the transition smoothly, but also to educate myself about where I was transitioning to, because I had both truth and lie in my education about Africa. So there were a lot of blanks to fill in. I first had to become comfortable with the idea that I had a connection to Africa, that I had a past, and that was not only worth investigating, but we also had the right to return if we wanted to. So, okay, so we prepared ourselves by studying history, by studying how the people lived according to their geography, what the economy was like, what the history of the regions of the various regions of Africa was like, what the languages were like, etc. All of those things that we take for granted when you go somewhere else and you're not familiar with the place, or you're not from the place, first person, you have to learn what it is that you're going to encounter.
Okay.
So we prepared ourselves for that.
Okay.
So we chose.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
So we chose a place initially that spoke English because we were from America here, and that's the only language that we were raised to know. So English, that was one of the criteria. And so we decided on West Africa because accordingly, a lot of the people who were transported from West Africa to the Americas and to the islands in South America came from West Africa. So we looked at the coast of West Africa for English-speaking countries. That was the initial criteria. So
Okay.
it came down to Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Ghana for me initially. All of those fit the criteria: English-speaking, West African, and who also had policies of welcoming back people from what's known now as the diaspora, or welcoming back black people from anywhere in the West who wanted to return to Africa. They were welcome to return through at least those three countries. There are others, but I know those three personally because they fit my particular criteria.
Okay.
So,
So for the listeners, repeat that a little louder again. Name the three countries in which people of color are welcome to return to in West Africa.
the first three that I researched and was strictly from was Sierra Leone,
Mm-hmm.
Liberia,
Mm-hmm.
and Ghana.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay. Those were the three that I finalized on, but those are not the only ones. I want to be that clear. Those are not the only three choices. Those came down to my three choices.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about Prince Azil Ben Israel. May peace be upon him.
Now, Prince Azil Ben Israel is the main reason that I went to Liberia, West Africa. Prince Azil Ben Israel is international ambassador for the original African Hebrew Israelite nation at Jerusalem. This is the community of brothers and sisters who left America in 1966 and went to Liberia, West Africa, and lived in Liberia, West Africa 2.5 years to prepare themselves for the ultimate journey, which was to go back to Israel, the land of Israel, in northeast Africa, in accordance with the prophecy of the return of the children of Israel back into the land of Israel after sojourning 400 years in the West or in captivity. Okay, so it was Prince Azil Ben Israel who brought that information to my attention and caused me to investigate the matter. I didn't understand any of that prior to his coming. And he educated me to the fact that first of all, the Israelites, or the 12 tribes of Israel, or the lost children of Israel, were also African, original African, and that Israel is a part of Northeast Africa. It's only separated from the continent of Northeast Africa, by the digging of the
Suez Canal.
All right, that's what separated. That's the only separation between that land. That land was joined. Remember, if you read the Bible, it talks about the children of Israel walking down into Egypt and vice versa, walking out of Egypt and then into the land of Israel, because it was landlocked. It was the same land. Okay. So he brought that not only to my attention, but to the world's attention. Okay, and he took that message to everywhere in the world. Many hundreds of thousands of miles traveled around the world to deliver that same message, that the kingdom of God had come, the chastisement of the original African Hebrew Israelites who were cast out of the land of Israel in 70 AD, are returning according to the prophetic 400-year chastisement period, and that they would return to the land to establish the kingdom of God. Well, in 1966, a group of 400 African Americans left America here and went to Liberia, West Africa, and and lived there for 2.5 years. They went to the bush. They didn't go to the city. They went to the bush in Liberia and lived there for 2.5 years, preparing themselves to journey back up to the land of Israel. Turns out the elder in Israel was the person who brought that and spoke that and helped facilitate the resettlement of the original African people back to their original land in accordance with what biblical prophecy had determined.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to have you back and have a separate show just on this topic.
Okay, again, there's a lot of information and a lot of I agree with you that we need more time so that it can be explained thoroughly and that all questions can be answered and be satisfied, because it's very important that we know that we have a right to be wherever we are. We have a right to be there as much as anyone. And so, and even in some cases, more than others, and that's our ancestral homeland. We're not just visitors. We're not just looking for a place. We're not refugees. We're not lost anymore. Okay? We found the truth necessary to qualify us to be where we're supposed to.
Well, I thank you. I thank you for those comments and input. If you wanted to recommend to someone, especially some of our young people, how they can learn more about ourselves, would there be any particular recommended reading or research you would direct them to?
There's so many things, but I'm going to start with something that may throw some people off, but I want people to start with the Bible. Read the Bible. Read the book of the Gospel, where it talks about stories of the children of Israel. To read that, just to read it, not to read it envisioning someone other than themselves being those people, but to read it and understand and envision themselves being those people. And you'll find that the story is very similar to the history that you may know about yourself already. I would recommend that one. There are many, the Destruction of African Civilization by Dr. Chancellor Williams. Is another book that I would recommend. I would recommend those two to start. Okay.
All right. Well, Prince El Rahim Ben Dan, we thank you for coming on tonight, and we look forward to having you as a guest on the show. And we promise we're going to have it sound better too. We're going to have you as a guest on the show, and we're going to do a show just talking about this topic.
Okay. Well, I'll come back at any time, and I would welcome a chance to further explain. I know we're kind of rushing and trying to get a lot of information in a short period of time, but I appreciate the opportunity to come back.
All right, and I'll see you before you go back to Africa, brother.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Okay, there you have it, folks. We the people. We had Prince El Rahim Ben Dan. He gave a brief synopsis about Prince Israel Ben Israel, and he talked quite a bit about the Hebrew Israelite movement and its history. We're going to take a quick caller, and then after that, we're going to have a break. Caller, you're on the air, WLTH 13 AM, Gary.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You know, that weather was very interesting. We're planning a trip to Ghana for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing a little research, and what I found out recently is that Ghana has had a less than 1,500 counts of COVID deaths.
Excuse me, ma'am. Could you speak into your phone a little bit more direct, please?
Very good.
Oh, yes, got the radio. Ma'am, could you speak into your phone a little bit clearer, please, or direct?
She just hung up.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, caller, for your input. She said that Ghana had less than 1,500 COVID deaths, so that was interesting as well. We got another caller. If we had time, we'll take one more. Caller, you're on the air. Thank you for calling We the People.
That was me calling back. So did you hear my information?
Yeah, I heard you mention about it was only 1,500 COVID deaths in Ghana, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was outstanding. So I'm going to be following your show, and I hope you have him back on the air.
We will. We're gonna have him. We're gonna have him back on there. We probably have him talk live from Africa. Maybe we could do a conference call with some African Americans there in West Africa, right here on the station.
Now, if you do that, I'll have people listening that time because there's a group of us going to Ghana
Okay.
next year.
Well, we're gonna stream the show, and they can probably listen there too.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna take a brief break, and then we're gonna come back with Attorney Justin Camper.